So Baruch Hashem, first of all, congratulations, Mazel Tov, everybody. This is a major milestone. We finished 121 dafim of Masechtas Pesachim, inaugural for our shul, which is amazing and wonderful. But now that we did Pesachim, we dive off the deep end. And for the next 21 days, we have this Masechta called Masechta Shekalim. Shekalim is an outlier. Number one, it's not Bavli. It's Yerushalmi. That's number one. Number two, it has no Rashi and it has no Tosfos. It's got a whole bunch of other people floating around the daf. Number three, don't look at the Gemara, at the Hebrew, at the Aramaic. It is choppy. The words are, in fact, there are words in there that we remove, we take out, we add in. You'll see. So stick to the English side of the daf. Number three, why is it even doing here? We are in Moyadim, holidays. Shekalim is talking about the machzis shekel, the half a shekel that we guys give for the kabbanos, for the offerings. What offerings? The communal offerings, meaning we're dealing with one large non-profit organization called the Beis HaMikdash. Nobody owns the Beis HaMikdash. We all own the Beis HaMikdash. It's a non-profit. So when the communal offerings are offered, i.e. the carbon atomid of every day, the tamid babayka, the tamid in the morning, or the tamid ben arbayim, or the tamid in the afternoon, which are communal offerings, or the musafim, or the carbon musafs that are brought on Rosh Chodesh, they are communal offerings. By definition, that means we all own it. We all have a piece of the action. How is this possible? Because we're all required to give a machzis shekel, a half a shekel, and from the pushka, from the charity box known as the machzis shekel, that charity box, we take out the money to buy the animals that are used for the communal offerings. So we all have a piece of it. So in that case, this Gemara really belonged where? In Kachim, right next to the Gemaras known as Zevachim, Menachos, Chulin. We should be getting to this Gemara 5 years from now. So what's it doing here? And the answer is, for us guys who learned Pesachim, we know we banked into this idea of the Shekalim, because when does the switch over take place? And this is the most important part. We all know the idea of Yashan and Chodosh when it comes to food. There are people that, that if you remember that the Omer was brought on the 16th of Nisan, the second day of Pesach, and from that moment on, the new grains were used and the old grains were no longer used, and everybody was allowed to start using the new grains from the new harvest. Similarly is in the Beis HaMikdash. Starting with the 1st of Nisan, with Rosh Chodesh Nisan, we start using the new machzis shekel money to buy the new year's worth of communal offerings. So you go 12 months using these machzis shekel, and on the last day of Adar, it's supposed to, all the money should have been used up. And if it wasn't used up, the old money is now put aside to purchase necessary things for the Beis HaMikdash, but is no longer used to buy communal offerings, because the new money, the new tax of machzis shekel, and machzis shekel is a tax, that machzis shekel begins anew come Nisan. Since it's tied to Chodesh Nisan, i.e. the month of Pesach, it was shoehorned this Masechta into here. One last thing, if you look at the daf, look at the actual Hebrew, I just want to go through what we have here. The Gemara number one is not like your regular Gemara. It will not look or feel like a Bavli. It is uniquely a Yerushalmi, as you'll see as we move it through. Number two, surrounding it is mainly the Korban Ha'edah. That's the big one going down the top, down the left side. And then in the right-hand side of the page, on the bottom section, on the right-hand side is the Taklin Chadatin. The Taklin Chadatin is the Rashi, as it were, for our Masechta. Most of the time, if we're going to refer to something, as we're going to do almost immediately when we start the mission in a minute, we're going to be referring back to the Taklin Chadatin. Okay? And it's always found, on the, what do you call it? It's usually, and you'll see, it's always found either when it's on Amud Aleph, it's found on the right side, and when it's Amud Beis, it's found on the left side. The last thing is, the dafim really do not look long, except if you look carefully, you'll see that the words are very small. This Tzuras Hadaf is different in Shekalim. The words are squeezed together. The letters are much smaller. We get more into the page, as it were, because there's nobody like Rashi. Rashi had the unique gift of writing short and sweet and being able to bring out the pshat. Nobody else has ever been able to copy a Rashi. Everybody else is much, much longer in their explanations. Okay? That is the basic understanding. The one other thing is we begin to discuss the Machzis HaShekel, but in fact, there were actually 13 different charity boxes lining the opening of the Mishkan of the Beis HaMikdash. So the truth is that the Machzis HaShekel was a required tax. Masha'enken, the other pushkas were if you wanted to give a donation for a specific purpose. So as you know, in non-profit giving, there's general fund, there's the temporary restricted fund, and there's the endowed fund. That, in fact, applies here too. There of these pushkas, there was charity boxes for the general fund. There were boxes that could be temporarily restricted to a specific area within the Beis HaMikdash. And then there were those that were endowed in the sense that they could only be used for the specific purpose of where they were put. So this idea of the way nonprofits are set up, in fact, is not a new 20th, 21st century idea, but is in fact a much more ancient idea in understanding how do you do with something that belongs to the cloud, that belongs to the community as a whole. Okay, if there are no questions, we begin. And again, I'm going to say we're beginning, I'm working in essence out of the English side of the page, though I'll have my finger on the other side just so we get an idea where we're up to on the dot. Says the halacha, and you'll notice in English, it doesn't say Mishnah, it says halacha 1. That's one of the differences between Bavli and Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi works with halachas, not with Mishnahs. Halacha 1. Be'echad ba'adar mashmiyim ala shkolim ala kalayim. On the first day of Adar, Rosh Chodesh Adar, the Bezdin comes along and starts announcing, sends out a WhatsApp regarding that we're coming up to, it's almost time for the payment of the Shekalim. Shekalim, of course, always means the Machsis HaShekel. And regarding Kalayim, what do you mean Kalayim? Kalayim in this case means, because in Adar, it's the Chodesh of the beginning of the growing season. And so, in growing, you have to be careful that you don't have two different types of grains growing within one field. The ratio being 1 to 24. If you have one pot of forbidden together with 24 of another kind, the one has to be removed. So they start announcing it in Adar because that's the beginning of the growing season. As you know, springtime shows up in Adar. The Chamisha Osabai, and on the 15th of Adar, the following things happen. Kairin es Megillah b'Karakin, to read the Megillah in the world cities. In other words, this is, just give me a second. This is b'Karakin. If you look at the Taklin Chadatin, let's just go down to the Taklin Chadatin, the 1, 2, 3, 4th line from the top. Hamukopos Chaimos biyamos Yeshua benun the whole like Tony b'masnisim biyudal kairin b'kifarim by Reis Kedosh Mefarish b'Gemara. So in other words, he's saying on the 15th, on those cities that are walled from the times of Yeshua benun, you go ahead and you read the Megillah on the 15th. And why doesn't it mention the regular cities? Read the Megillah on the 14th if we're discussing what takes place in Adar. Why don't we bring up the fact that the regular cities are that read on the 14th, and also those cities, the villages, when they come in for shopping days, Monday and Thursdays for the market, they read then. The Gemara is going to explain it. And we go further. Umisakin es haderochin ve'es harechoybos. And we repair the roads and the streets. And the reason for that is because we're now within 30 days of Pesach, of the Oile Regolim, of the pilgrimage up to Yerushalayim for the Carbon Pesach and to visit with Hashem, right? And so since we're within 30 days, now it's time, the winter is ending, to repair the roads and the streets. And the es mikvoyis hamayim, and the mikvahs of water. Number one, from all the dirt that accumulated during the winter months. And number two, to make sure that there is further 40 saw of water, 3 cubic feet of water within the mikvah, so that it's a kosher mikvah. And we attend to all the tzarchei rabim, all the public needs. Obviously, the Gemara is going to go in and say, what do I need these 4 words? What is it coming to add to what with the list that we just said? And further, umitzayin es hakivaris, and we mark up the kivaris, because the winter months came, the snow and the rain, it washed away the markers. So now that the Oile Regolim are coming and all the Kahanim are coming to Yerushalayim, we're afraid that the Kahanim will become Tomei because they're going to walk through these Kavarim that are unmarked. So now we remark the Kavarim. The Yoitzin Af ala Kalayim. And the Kalayim, the growth, the grains that are growing on the 1st of the month on Rosh Chodesh, we announce, be careful. On the 15th of the month, Bezdin sends out its people to start going into people's gardens and ripping out the Kalayim. Okay? Zok the Gemara. We are now on 2A2. Okay? 2A2. And again, if along the way, stop me, because some of this Gemara, it's not hard Gemara, it's just the wording is very difficult. It says the Gemara, "V'lama be'echad ba'adar." Why do they start announcing about the Shekalim on the 1st of Adar? Kedei sheyaviu Yisrael el shekleihem b'oinosan. So Klal Yisrael should bring the Shekalim in the designated time, in the right time. The Sitorein to Rumas Halishcha min Achadosha Bizmano. And in this way, the withdrawal of the funds will be made with the new donations, with the Chadosh in its proper time, the Echad b'Nisan in the 1st of Nisan. For that, everybody go back down to the Taklim Chadatin, go down to the Gemara, again, down to the Taklim Chadatin, the first Taklim Chadatin in the Gemara. Kedei sheyabayu, Mipnei, because shebe'echad b'Nisan hayu tzarichen lahakriv kabonei satzibor, because on the 1st of Nisan on Rosh Chodesh they had to offer up the communal offerings mitruma chadasha from new funds to the kidelekamon mishum hachi, and because of this. Hayu be bezdin makdimin lahakriz al shekalim be'echad ba'adar. So Bezdin would start announcing about giving the new money, the new shekels, 1 month earlier on the 1st of Adar. Ahainu shloishim yoim, 30 days, koydem before, kedei sheyabayu shall claim, to give people enough time to come up with the machzis hashekel and to bring the machzis hashekel in. And as you know, when do we do today the machzis hashekel? Right before Megillah, at Mincha on Tainus Esther, right before Megillah, we do the machzis hashekel. Okay, so back to the Gemara. Okay, now you're going to see the words here. Umar Rebbe Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak. In the Bavli, of course, it will simply say Rabbi Yishmael bar Rabbi Yitzchak Omer. Here it doesn't say that. In Bavli, it doesn't. In Yerushalmi, it doesn't use those words. Umar Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak. It means the same thing. Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak said, "Trumas halishcha b'sechilasa." The taking out of the new shekalim occurs on the 1st day of Nisan, just like the techilasa, like it did in the midbar, in the wilderness. Because it says in the Torah, and it was on the first month. Bashana Hashenis, in the 2nd year, be'echad lachodesh, on the 1st day of the 1st month, Hukam HaMishkan, the Mishkan was erected. The Tanya law and the Baraisa says regarding the inauguration of the Mishkan, the Yom Shehukan HaMishkan, Boy Bayom Nismeva Teruma. On the day that the Mishkan was erected, on that very day, the withdrawal of the new Machzis HaShekel was made from the treasury. So just like it was done in the Midbar that way, so too it'll be done. That's the way we're going to do it now in our Beis Hamikdash. The 1st of Nisan, we begin with the new and out with the old. Rebbe Tovi v'Rav Oishia b'Shem Kahana. Rav Tovi and Rav Oishia said in the name of Rav Kahana. Nemakan v'lechodshei hashonim. Pasuk says, "Oilas chodesh b'chodshei lechodshei hashana," for the months of the year. V'neman laharon, and it says over there and it stays over there regarding it how it should be counted. Lechodshei hashana. It's obviously referring to Chodesh Nisan, because that pasuk is right before the discussion of bringing the Korban Pesach. Ma l'chodshei shenema lahalon ein moinin ela b'nisan. Now, just like the pasuk of the months of the year that's stated regarding the Exodus teaches that we count the new year only from Nisan. So too for the months of the year that it says by Bamidbar, by Rosh Chodesh Leining and Parashas Pinchas, it also means that we start the shekels, the Machzis HaShekel, only from the beginning of Nisan. The Gemara says that's no good, because you're only learning half the Baraisa. V'amar Rabbi Yoina, Shavak Rab Tobi, Roisha Demasnisa B'oimas Seifa. Rab Tobi took away the first part of the Baraisa and only said the latter part of the Baraisa. Without the first part, it doesn't establish anything. Because it goes like this. Delekain kahadya detane. Take out the word deloy. It's not deloy. It's the delekain kahadya detane. Because you have, and you must quote the Baraisa like it's taught in the Sifri. When you learn the whole Baraisa, that there's an obligation to use new Shekalim each year for carbon sibur for the communal offerings, and that the new year begins with Chodesh Nisan. This is how you learn. Zois oilas Chodesh b'chodshoy. This is the oila of the new moon at its renewal. Yochel yehei toirim b'chol Chodesh v'chodesh. From those words, it would seem that every month, that's when I withdraw the funds. Every month, I withdraw funds to take care of the new month's communal offerings. Talmud Loima 2a number 3, Talmud Loima B'chodshay l'chodshay, in the month, for the month of the year, which tells us B'chodesh echad hu toirim, only in one specific month do you separate the money. L'chol chodshay hashana, for all the months of the year. At one time, at one specific time of the year, we split the money into 12 different portions to cover the communal offerings for everyone. Yachol be'ezeh chodesh yirtzeh. I might have thought you could do it in any month that you feel like. Pick one month and split it up. Nema kan lechodshay, v'nema lahalon lechodshay, ma lechodshay shnema lahalon ein moinin ela b'nisan, av lechodshay shnema kan ein moinin ela b'nisan. Everything happens in Nisan. Everything happens in Nisan. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, so the Gemara is going to talk about, because here's the facts. From here we just learned you pull out the money only once a year. The problem is we're about to learn that at right before every Shalosh Regalim, before Pesach, before Shavuos, and before Sukkot, they used to pull money out. So the Gemara is eventually going to ask, what are you talking about that you only pull out the money once? We see in the Beis Hamikdash they pulled out money 3 times. So what's going on? The Gemara is going to get to that. So it says the Gemara, first of all, Ma'u Mashmiin. What does it mean, Mashmiin? If you look in the up on top, in the Mishnah, in the Halacha, it says, Be'echad ba'ado Mashmiin ala shkolim. We're Mashmiin ala shkolim. What does Mashmiin mean? Rav Huna Omar. Rav Huna says, Machrizin, it means we proclaim, we announce, we send out a car with a mic on top of the car. If you've ever been to Brooklyn, you know that happens too often. And it goes out and you say, what do you call it? You start making announcements. Okay? Now, the question is, the Gemara doesn't ask this question, but it's built into this question. How come this mitzvah of Machzis HaShekel, we have to make announcements, but for all other mitzvahs, Lamashal, the Carbon Pesach and the Chagiga, we don't make any announcements. Hey, in 30 days from now, you got to bring a Carbon Pesach. We don't make announcements about Lulav and Esrog. So how come this gets an announcement? What's so special about this that it gets an announcement? Says the Gemara. And again, if you look in the English, they're taking out the words, Kemo de Temo. like we learned. Vayitnu kol b'Yehuda b'Yerushalayim, because they issued a proclamation through Yehuda and Yerushalayim to bring to Hashem the tax ordained by Moshe, the Eved Hashem, upon Israel in the Midbar. The tax was the obligatory Machzis HaShekel that needs to be brought. So you see that Minat Torah, the Machzis HaShekel needs to be announced, needs to get an announcement. Okay? By the way, you'll notice the word is Yerushalayim, not Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim. Now, why is that? If you look through all the Navi, it never says Yerushalayim. Because Yerushalayim means Yad, Yadayim. One hand, two hands. Regel, one leg. Raglayim, two legs. Yerushalayim is only one city. So the real name is Yerushalayim. So why do we say Yerushalayim, two cities? Because we say Yerushalayim Shalmata Mechubra Yerushalayim Shalmala. The Yerushalayim of below is connected with Yerushalayim of up high. That in fact, imposing itself on Yerushalayim is a second Yerushalayim, and that is the reason why we say Yerushalayim Eina Min Amida. Yerushalayim cannot be measured. That's why in the Beis Hamikdash it said, they stood packed together, but every time they bowed down, miraculously, they all got 4 amos. How did this happen? Because there's another Yerushalayim. They expanded into the other Yerushalayim. That's why the Navi calls it Yerushalayim, because it's really one city. But we say Yerushalayim because we're saying it's really 2 cities. Further, Tamon Taninan, we learned in the Mishnah, what happens if after you go through Chodesh Adar, you decide, we got to make an Adar Sheni. We got to make a second Adar. So what happens to everything that you did in the first Adar? The announcements for the shekel, the giving of the shekel, the reading of the Megillah, the giving of Matanas Lev Yoinim and Shalach Manas. What do? Says the Gemara right over here, Tamam Tininan, Ein Bein Adar Rishon Adar Sheni. There's no difference between Adar Rishon and Adar Sheni. Ela Mikra Megillah Matanas Lev Yoinim. Except the reading of the Megillah and giving to the poor, which has to be done in Adar Sheni. So even if you did it in Adar Rishon, it doesn't help you. Rav Simon b'Shem Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rav Simon said in the name of Yeshua ben Levi, Af Shemua Shekalim v'Kalayim b'Neyim. Also, the announcement regarding giving the Shekalim and removing the Kalayim is also another difference. You got to redo it. You got to redo it because one of the reasons why they made an Adar Sheni, a second thing, because they went into the fields and they saw that the grains were not sprouting. They hadn't yet grown. So they said, oops, that means the months are still too much into the winter time. Remember, in the lunar year, every year you lose 11 days against, I'm sorry. I apologize. You lose 11 days against the regular year, the sun year, 365 days versus 354 days. And that's why it keeps moving backwards into the winter, as opposed to the Arabs, Islam, which does not adjust their lunar year. And that's why, what's it called? The thing that goes on for a whole month. What's their holiday that goes on for a whole month? I forgot what it's called. You guys remember what it's called?
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Oh, boy.
It's okay.
Okay, anyways, the point is...
By who?
By the Arabs. By the Muslims.
Ramadan.
Ramadan.
It's 40 days.
40 days. So Ramadan moves around the calendar. Sometimes it's in the spring. Sometimes it's in the winter. Sometimes it's in the summer. How does this happen? Because they never adjust the lunar calendar. They never add a month. So every year they're losing 11 days against the regular calendar. We do not do that because the Torah says by Korban Pesach, v'chodesh ha'aviv, in the month of the spring. What's the month of the spring? We're learning it now. Is Nisan. So if we didn't adjust it, obviously Nisan will end up not in the spring. Will end up back in the winter. So one of the ways they did the adjustments is they took a look and saw if grains were growing in the fields. If grains were not growing in the fields by the 15th of the month or so in Adar, then they would already proclaim of Adar Sheni. That was one of the things. So in that case, the announcement that they made regarding Kalayim on the first Adar, on the Rosh Chodesh of the first Adar, is too far in advance. So therefore it says Rab Simon ben Shem, Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Av Shemua Shekalim v'Kalayim b'neihem. Even the proclaiming the Shekalim and removing the Kalayim is the difference between them. Rav Chelboy, the Rav Huna, Rav b'Shem Rav Chia Rabbo, Rav Chelboy, Rav Huna, and Rav in the name of Rav Chia the Great said, Hakol yoitzim ba'arba asa. All people discharge their obligation. All people discharge their obligation. It's been on the 14th of the month. Shezud Zaman Kriyosa. This is its main time of reading. In other words, what is he really saying over here? Just hang on a second. He's saying like this. In other words, if you read the Megillah in the right time and Adar Rishon, the regular people on the 14th and those who have rules from the times of Yeshua ben Nun read it on the 15th. And then Bezdin was Misakin and Ibriyar. They made an Adar Sheni, Memela, in the next month. Memela, when they read it during the time of Adar Rishon, they were really Mekayim the mitzvah. It's only after they learned it that Bezdin made an Adar Sheni. But at the time that they did it, they were already Mekayim it. It's only Bezdin that came afterwards and said no. Says Rav Chelboy, in that case, in the Adar Sheni, everybody could reread the Megillah. Everybody, even those cities that are surrounded by walls, could reread the Megillah on the 14th, and they're Mekayim their mitzvah of reading the Megillah. We are now on the next page. Amar Rabbi Yosi, we're on 2A4. Amar Rabbi Yosi, V'yos, and he was correct, Rabbi Shua ben Levi, when he said that the Shekalim and the Kalayim need to be announced again in Adar Sheni. Klum Amru Mashmiim ala Shekalim. Why did the Rabbanim say we have to proclaim about the Shekalim? Loi, not. Kedei she'yaviu Yisrael l'shekei b'oinasa. It's so that Klal Yisrael, right? Is it not? Because Klal Yisrael should bring it in their time, in its correct time. Im at Amar be'Adar Rishon. So if you only made the announcement on the first Rosh Chodesh of the first Adar, Ad Kedoin is B'Shata Shita Yomin. That means since now we made an Adar Sheni, it turns out there are 60 days between the announcement of Adar Rishon to the giving of the Matzahs HaShekel by Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That's too long, right? And that's too long. People are not going to remember. Klum, same thing with Kalayim. Klum Amru Yoitzim Ap Ala Kalayim. Didn't the Rebbe say you should go out to check your fields for Kalayim on the 15th of Adar as they begin to sprout to make sure you don't have two different grains growing in the same place? Loi Kedeshiyu Hatzmochin Nikorim. Because the shoots will now become discernible because they're popping up, right? And now you can pull it out. Now, im at Amar be'Adar Rishon, if you're going to say you're going to make this announcement to get ready to remove the Kalayim on the 15th of the month. Av Kidoin, the Iner Dar Kikin. The plants are too small 15 days later. That's one of the reasons why we made an Adar Sheni, because we looked in the fields and we realized it's still too cold and the sprouts are not sprouting, right? So now what's going to happen, if you rely on that first one, it's going to be 45 days until the 15th of Adar Sheni. That's already too long. Rav Chizkiya asks, like this, Umeyata, now that we said that the reason for the Shekalim and the Kalayim are made in Adar Sheni is because of the time, because we're afraid that if you extend the time 60 days or 45 days, people are going to procrastinate. People are going to procrastinate and say, oh, we have so much time. I've got so much time. They've got 60 days, not 30 days to find my Shekalim. I got 40 days to deal with the client. And you know how people are. When you procrastinate, what happens? You forget, right? Ask everybody, ask your wife. When she tells you to do something, you say, I'll do it tomorrow. You know tomorrow never comes, right? So, he says like this, B'nei Bovel mashmiim al hashkolim miroishe shel chayre. Therefore, the people of Bovel, who live very far from Yerushalayim, must proclaim regarding the Shekalim from the beginning of winter. From the beginning of winter. Okay? What do you call Loi Kedei Sheyaviu Yisol Shekleim B'Nosav. In order that the people of Babel who live far away from Yerushalayim should bring their Shekalim in their right time. And this way, they will be part of the withdrawal of the new funds for the new communal offerings, for the new Tamid and Musafim that are brought on Chodesh Nisan. They will be part and parcel of it, and they will get the mitzvah as well. So that sounds all very logical, except we go further. Yosef Rav Ula Kamei the Rabbi Mana. Rav Ula's retorted in the presence of Ramana, no, I don't like what Rav Chizkiya said. But we learned in a Mishnah, 3 times in the year, not once, but 3 times in the year. 3 times in the year, we take money out of the box. We take money out of the box. Perois Pesach, 15 days before Pesach. Perois Hatzeres, 15 days before Shavuos. Perois Achag, 15 days before Sukkot. Amalei Lo Yeyoma, should it not be said that this is what we're talking about? Ilay the Kriven Perois HaPesach. Those who are close to Eretz Yisrael bring their machzis shekel 15 days before Pesach, and that's the shkolim that are used by the gizbar, by the Beis Hamikdash's treasurer to use for the communal offerings at that time. Those who are further from Eretz Yisrael bring their machzis shekel 15 days before Shavuos. And then their money is used by the Gizbarim, by the treasurers, for the next set of communal offerings. The Eli, the Rechaikim, Perais, and those who are living in Europe and in America have until have all the way until Sukkot to bring 15 days before Sukkot on right before Rosh Hashanah to bring the Shekalim, and theirs will be used for Sukkot. So what do you see? That the funds are not withdrawn at one time because apparently not all the Jews can get there by that time. So what do we got here? You see that the Shekalim can be given many different times, not just on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So therefore, what's this announcement business? Says the Gemara. Okay, and now, what do you call it? If you had to bring everything. Now, if Rav Chizkiya holds that the Shekalim would absolutely reach Yerushalayim at the first of Nisan. And in Bovel, they would make the announcements during the winter, so people would have to bring their money throughout the winter months to get their money there, because there's only one time a year, right? There would be no need to make 3 withdrawals. Why are you making 3 withdrawals? There's only 1 withdrawal, and everybody's got to bring their money before Nisan. So now we're on Amud Beis. 2B1. 2B1. Okay? Amalei, so we're on Amud Beis. Amalei, Kula Ka'achas Subah. Says Ramana Turula. In fact, all the Machzis shekel, all the half shekels came one time. At the beginning of Rosh Chodesh Nisan, everybody had to bring, and those who were far away had to fly into Eretz Yisrael in Shabbat and Adar and deliver the Machzis shekel. And therefore, Lama Amru b'Shloisha Parakim. So why did the Mishnah say that they withdrew the money by 15 days before Pesach, 15 days before Shavuos, 15 days before Sukkot? Let them just take out the money once at the beginning of Nisan, when all the money is there. Kidei lasais pumbe ledava, to make Persume Nisan, that we make a big deal so that people should constantly remember why they're giving the Machzis shekel. To make a big deal, everybody, we're using your money to go ahead and bring the communal offerings by Pesach, by Shavuos, and by Sukkot. And that's the thing. Marketing is everything. Even though all the money was actually there from the time of Nisan, in order to be mefarsem and make people excited and be willing to keep their words. So, for an example, in BJC, in this last year, they created this new fund. What's it called? The Legacy Fund? I think it was Charlie's brilliant idea. Right, Charlie? You came up with the Heritage Fund, right? Heritage Fund, what is it called in the shul? It's called the Heritage Fund, the Heritage Fund, or
The Heritage
Legacy
Society.
Fund. The Heritage Society. Why do we need the Heritage Society? Because Charlie already knew the Gemara. If you want people to give money, you got to market. You got to market the money. Why? Kedei lasais pumbe ludavar. You make it to publicize the matter. If everybody gave their money only at the beginning of the year, which is what they did, so everybody gave their money at the beginning of Nisan, and then you didn't put a big plaque in front of the Beis Hamikdash, right? In a month, everybody would forget, and the enthusiasm would fail. So even in the Beis Hamikdash, they had all their money by the beginning of Nisan. They may have even separated it. They may have already budgeted for every month based on the money they had. Nonetheless, before every one of the Shalosh Regalim, they would go in and make a whole public production. We're taking your money, the money you contributed, and with that money, we're buying and using and bringing the communal offerings. And that is the right way to do tzedakah. That's exactly right. So a little further, let's just get a little further down. We don't want to pull too far behind. Let's do it 5 more minutes, and then wherever we are, we are. It's 9 o'clock, so let's just go to 5 after 9, because I just want to move, because it's very interesting, the next piece of Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda bar Pazi b'shem Rebbe. Rabbi Yehuda bar Pazi said in the name of Rebbe. We're again 2B1. Hi, Nikra V'loini Bas. Hi, Nikra V'loini Bas. The Taklin Chavitin, about 25 lines down. The third one says, Bitmia, with wonderment, Kloima, Ein Nikra es Mikrois Halol. One would not read these psukim. V'lo yachazu me'ata v'charado mehem. Would not gasp and tremble. Eich Nikra es Mikrois what do you call it? Halol anu loimde kama godol koi tzahara. You see the great strength of the evil inclination. What are we saying over here? Hey, Nikolai, Nabois Latoivo, when Klal Yisrael was asked to donate for the good when they're asked to donate for the BJC of the time, i.e., the building of the Mishkan, it says, Kol Nediv Lev, whoever was generous. That means only those who were generous, but not everybody. L'ra, when it came to donating for the Egel, for the golden calf, the entire people removed this stuff. Look at the power of the evil inclination. L'toiva, when it came time to receive the Torah, it says, Vayoytze Moshe esam, and Moshe brought out the people from the camp. Moshe had to come and bring the people. They didn't come by themselves. L'ra, but when it came to sending the Meraglim, the spies to Eretz Yisrael, it says, Vatikru alai kolchem, all of you approached me. Everybody came. For trouble, everybody's there. I said last week that Rapam Zechel Lebrocha said, why do we have Vayakel Pekudei, which is 200 psukim that is simply repeating Tetzaveh. So he said, Rapam, beautiful. He said into the Sisa, you should do. In Vayakel Pekudei it says Vayas, and they did. A lot of people say, yeah, we should. A lot less people are there for the Vayas, the doing, right? And it's worth it for the Torah to repeat 200 psukim to celebrate the Vayas, and they did. It's one thing to talk a good game. It's another thing to get your hands dirty and actually do the work. And this is where you see it. It's the Yetzer Hara playing with us. L'toiva, again, by Kriyas Yamsuf, when it came time to sing the Shira to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Oz Yoshem Moshe B'nei Yisrael. Then Moshe and the children of Yisrael sang. It means only after Moshe began were the rest of Klal Yisrael inspired to join. L'ra, but regarding evil, when the Meraglim came back and spoke Lashon Hara on Eretz Yisrael, Batisa Kol Ha'eda, and the entire congregation raised their voices and cried. Amar Reb Chia bar Abba, Even Ishkimu Hashchisu. The Sefania, what he called, gave Musar to the people. If you look in the article, it says like this: I said, just fear me and accept Teichacha, so that your abode would not be terminated despite all I have ordained for her. But instead, they rose early and corrupted their deeds. But they rose early and corrupted their deeds. Now, we know the halacha is zeriz and magdim and lemitzvahs. Only the zealous are magdim and for mitzvahs. But all the corruption that the people perform, they all did it in the morning. So few people show up at the 645 million. Very few people show up at the 645 million. But unfortunately, for the bad stuff, it's not a problem getting the whole crowd. Let's just go a little further and then we're done for the day. Amar Rab Abba Barachov, Ein Ato Yochel Laman Aloita Shel Umazu. You cannot comprehend the contradictory behavior of this nation, i.e. of Klal Yisrael. Nispoim le'egel v'noisnim. On the one hand, they were solicited for money for the golden calf, for the egel masecha, and they gave. Nispoim le'mishka v'noisnim. Then, on the other hand, they were solicited to give money for the mishkan, for the tabernacle, and they gave. Tana Rav Yosi bar Chanina Hadom Misnisa, said Rav Yosi bar Chanina Disparaisa, V'asisa kapoire zotar. You shall make a covering of pure gold for the Aron HaKodesh, for the Holy Ark. On 2b2, and this is where we're ending. The Yavoy Zov Shel Kapoires, the gold of the golden cover should come. The Yechaper Al Zov Shel Egel, and will come and atone for the gold of the calf, of the golden calf. Very good. This is where we're up to. We're up to Rav Chagi B'Shem Rav Shmuel Bar Nachman. Welcome to Shekalim.